This is a quiet story, told in darkness. When you're ready, we'll begin. The Dust, the Clerk, and the River. A tale set in Lao Tzu's era. Wei was born in a narrow alley just beyond the eastern market of the Zhou capital, a place where the air always smelled of fermented grain, river mud, and charcoal smoke. His mother sold dyed fabrics. His father rarely spoke. Their home was small enough that Wei remembered early life as a series of crowded sounds, vendors calling prices, neighbors arguing, carts rattling, and wind scraping dust across stone. From childhood, Wei learned to read people faster than he learned to read characters. When merchants haggled, his mother whispered to him, "Watch their eyes, Wei. Most lies start there." When guards patrolled, she murmured, "Don't hold their gaze. It makes them think you're hiding something." When debt collectors visited, her voice sharpened. "Stay behind me. Say nothing." Wei absorbed it all. Every gesture, every tone. Life felt like walking through a forest of blades. When he was 7, he saw a street brawl end with a man's skull cracked against a cartwheel. When he was 9, he heard a neighbor accuse another of stealing grain. The accused sobbed through the night until the guards dragged him away. When he was 11, his father lost their savings to a gambling ring and returned home with 2 broken ribs and silence welted between his teeth. Wei learned to anticipate danger like animals sense storms. He tucked his fears into a tight coil inside his chest. He believed survival meant shrieking, studying, adjusting, and never being seen too clearly. Still, he had one talent: writing. His characters were steady even when his emotions weren't. By 17, he found work as a palace clerk, copying tax records, census tallies, ministerial orders. It was dull but respectable. His family celebrated as if he had become a prince. But Wei's mind was not built for calm. The court, the bureaucracy, the endless judging eyes. Everything in him that had once been cautious now became defensive, paranoid, self-protective. Every mistake felt fatal. Every whispered conversation twisted into a threat. Wei lived in a constant state of inward flinch. He studied his superior's expressions like a hunted animal watches predators. He worked late into the night to avoid being noticed. When someone praised another clerk, Wei felt as if a hand had closed around his throat. When someone criticized him, his ears burned with shame for days. He carried tension everywhere. Shoulders locked, jaw clenched, belly tight, breath shallow. Even his steps echoed caution. What tormented him wasn't the work. It was a belief that he was always one mistake away from ruin. The meeting. One evening, exhausted and hollow, Wei was delivering a stack of census scrolls to the archives. The corridor lamps flickered low, shadows moving like slow water along the walls. Inside, he found an old man sweeping the dusty floor. Wei knew of him by reputation: Lao Tzu, the keeper of the archives. A man whispered about in the way people whisper about sudden storms. Quiet, unpredictable, impossible to categorize. Some said he had once advised princes. Others claimed he was merely an eccentric old scholar who refused promotion. Wei hesitated at the entrance. The old man swept in long, gentle arcs, as if clearing dust was a sacred act. Master Lao, Wei said, bowing stiffly. Lao Tzu lifted his head slightly. His face looked carved from driftwood. Soft lines, deep-set calm. Eyes like still water. Yes? Wei swallowed. I bring the census records. Lao Tzu leaned the broom against the wall, took the scrolls, and studied Wei with a kind of relaxed attention that made Wei feel even more exposed. You look burdened, the old man said. Wei stiffened. With work, master. No, Lao Tzu murmured. With yourself. Wei felt heat crawl up his neck. I don't understand. Lao Tzu smiled faintly, the kind of smile that wasn't aimed at someone, but simply existed. Most people spend their lives rearranging their fears, he said, and call it effort. Wei blinked. His heartbeat fluttered. Something in the old man's tone, so unforced, so simple, dislodged a feeling he had kept buried for years. Lao Tzu handed the scrolls to an apprentice and returned to sweeping. Tell me, he said softly, how long have you been trying to survive yourself? Wei felt dizzy at the question. Master, Lao Tzu didn't push. He didn't judge. He just swept, each stroke steady as breath. After a long moment, Wei forced a bow and excused himself, retreating down the corridor as the question echoed through his skull. Survive yourself. The word struck him like a bell. He felt something shake loose deep inside. Just a tremor, but enough to trouble the still waters he tried so hard to keep frozen. Over the days that followed, the question clung to him. When a superior scolded him for a miscopied character, he heard it. Survive yourself. When he felt envy twist in his chest at another's clerk's praise, survive yourself. When he replayed conversations, worrying how he had sounded, survive yourself. He felt the truth lurking behind the phrase, but he couldn't fully touch it. Not yet. The breaking point. Then came the day everything cracked. It was during a public reading of the quarterly tax report. We stood beside the minister's lectern, holding the next set of scrolls. The hall was packed. Advisors, officials, guards, scribes. A sea of eyes, waiting for a slip. Way superior, Magistrate Wren, a man whose pride was scented like incense, took the scroll and immediately frowned. Who copied this? Wren demanded. Wei stepped forward. I did, sir. Wren held the scroll up so everyone could see it. Look at this handwriting. Crooked, uneven, childish. Snickers whispered through the hall. Laughter followed. Wei's ears burned. His vision narrowed. His mind screamed. Defend yourself. Fight. Justify. Don't be small. Don't be weak. Don't be nothing. But when he opened his mouth, no sound came out. Rin waved him away like an insect. Fix it tonight. Try not to embarrass your office again. More laughter. More heat. More suffocating shame. And that was it. That was the moment the tight coil inside him finally snapped. Wei didn't return to his desk. He didn't speak to anyone. He walked, fast, almost blindly, down the outer steps of the palace, through the market road, and toward the river. His breath became sharp. His chest felt like a fist. His mind collapsed to a single point of humiliation. He reached the riverbank and stopped. The water slid past with a soft, ceaseless sound, an endless, effortless movement. It flowed around rocks, over roots, carrying leaves, sticks, petals, reflecting the late sun in fractured gold. It didn't resist. It didn't defend itself. It didn't hold on to shape. It simply moved. Wei sank to his knees. His hands shook. His jaw trembled. For the first time since childhood, he allowed the coil inside him to loosen, just slightly. Something in him whispered, "What if the part of you that panics is not you? What if it's just a frightened habit wearing your name?" He stayed there until dusk, breathing, listening, watching the river slip past without effort, without armor, without ego. When he finally rose, nothing had been solved. Yet something had undeniably begun. The first turning. The next morning, Wei woke before dawn. His sleep had been thin and restless, but something subtle had changed. Like a thread in his chest had loosened, allowing a bit of air to move where there had only been tightness before. He couldn't explain it. He didn't try to. He simply went to work. The palace was already stirring. Servants lit incense. Guards changed shifts. Officials hurried with scrolls clutched to their chests. Wei walked slowly, as if each step needed to reacquaint itself with the ground. When he reached the clerk's hall, the usual buzz of comparison swarmed around him. Who had earned praise? Who'd made errors? Who'd been seen meeting with whom? Normally, Wei absorbed all of it like blows. Today, it felt distant, muffled, as if happening behind a thin veil. He took his seat. He unrolled the damaged scroll Magistrate Ren had mocked. He dipped his brush. His hand trembled slightly. He stopped. For years he'd copied characters with rigid precision. Terrified, each stroke was a test of worth. Now he stared at the empty space before him, a small rectangle of silence in which each character would be born. He breathed. He rested his hands on the table. He waited. A question rose, quiet and persistent. Who am I trying to prove myself to? He didn't know the answer. He only knew the question should be asked. So he wrote, not frantically, not defensively, but with a strange and gentle attention. His strokes were steadier than usual. His mind felt slightly less crowded. When Magistrate Ren passed behind him later in the morning, Wei braced out of habit. But Ren didn't stop, didn't insult, didn't praise, didn't even look at him. Something odd happened. Wei didn't collapse inward. He didn't flinch. The absence of reaction felt almost like a small victory. Small transformations. In the days that followed, the changes were small enough to miss unless he was watching for them. He found himself waking before dawn. By midday, he felt calm enough to do something he'd never done. Take his lunch outside. He walked to the small courtyard behind the archives, where a single crooked tree grew in a patch of sun. Clerks rarely visited this spot because birds nested in the branches, and the fallen feathers annoyed them. Wei sat under the tree, and ate in silence. The breeze rustled the leaves. Birds chirped. His chest felt spacious. After a while, he heard footsteps. Soft, measured, unhurried. He looked up. Lao Tzu stood before him, holding a small clay cup of tea, steam curling from its lip. "May I sit?" the old man asked. Wei swallowed. "Of course, master." Lao Tzu lowered himself to the ground with the grace of someone settling into a familiar rhythm. He didn't speak at first. He sipped his tea and watched the branches sway above them. Finally, he said, "When you left the archives the other night, you walked as if hunted." Wei stared at the dirt between his knees. I felt ashamed. Lao Tzu nodded, as if Wei had announced it might rain. "And now?" Wei hesitated. "I'm not sure. Something loosened." The old man smiled softly. "Good. Loosening is the beginning of freedom." Wei took a shaky breath. "Master, why did your question about surviving myself affect me so strongly?" Lao Tzu tilted his head, studying a bird hopping along a branch. "Because it was true, and because you were ready to hear it." Wei frowned. "I don't feel ready for much." "Readiness," Lao Tzu said, "is not the absence of fear. It is the presence of sincerity." Wei let the words settle. They felt like water easing into dry earth. "Master," he said slowly, "my whole life has been reaction. I don't know who I am without it." "Most people mistake their patterns for their person," Lao Tzu said. "They think the frightened cluster of habits is the self. They think repeating the same tensions is living." Wei felt exposed, but not threatened. Like someone had finally spoken an uncomfortable truth he'd been carrying alone. Lao Tzu continued, "Your fear is not you. Your shame is not you. They are weather. You are the sky." Wei blinked. The words hit something deep. Lao Tzu sipped his tea again. "Tell me, when you fled before, what did you see at the river?" Wei exhaled slowly. "The water. It didn't fight anything. It didn't try to hold its shape. It just moved." "And?" Lao Tzu prompted gently. "And," Wei's voice softened to a whisper, "I wish I could be like that." Lao Tzu smiled. Not with amusement, but with recognition. "A good wish, but you cannot become the river by wanting, only by relaxing." Wei's brow furrowed. "Relaxing?" "Yes. The way water relaxes into whatever contains it. The way a tree relaxes into wind. The way dust relaxes when it falls." Wei felt his throat tighten. "Master, I've been tense for so long. I don't know how to untangle myself." Lao Tzu gave a small, almost invisible shrug. "Then don't. Simply watch the tangles. Observing a knot begins its undoing." Wei lowered his gaze. Shame flickered, but had lost some of its old bite. "I don't know if I deserve to change." Lao Tzu chuckled quietly. "The river does not check if it deserves to flow." A long, soft breeze drifted through the courtyard. Leaves rustled. Wei felt the sunlight warmed the top of his hands. After a while, he looked up, noticing the old man walking away. Wei remained beneath the crooked tree for a long time after, staring at the shadows shifting on the ground. Something in him, small but sincere, knew that the path he had stepped onto was no longer the path he had walked his entire life. The coil inside him was loosening, but not randomly, gently, like a rope catching sunlight for the first time. He didn't understand what was happening. He only knew he couldn't return to the old way. Return to the library. In the weeks that followed, Wei noticed himself, different from before, in quiet moments of observation. He did not seek answers. He simply watched. Then one evening, as the sun bled orange along the palace roofs, Wei made his way to the archives. The corridors were quieter at dusk, lanterns casting soft halos along the stone floors. Most clerks had gone home, and those who remained walked with the tired shuffle of people who had nothing left to pretend. Wei stepped inside. The archives breathed a different air after dark. Dust motes drifting like tiny spirits, shelves rising like wooden cliffs, scrolls resting in shadowed alcoves as if holding up the city's collective memory. And in the center of the dim room, Lao Tzu knelt beside an open cabinet, sorting tablets with deliberate gentleness. Wei bowed. Lao Tzu nodded, then gestured toward a low table. On it rested two items: a small brass mirror, a single unlit oil lamp. Sit, the old man said. Wei obeyed. Lao Tzu lit the lamp. Its flame flickered softly, like a heartbeat. The mirror reflected the glow, casting faint tremors of light across the table. Look, Lao Tzu said. Wei leaned toward the mirror. In the wavering light, his face seemed almost unfamiliar, eyes tired, jaw tense, shoulders slightly hunched, even while sitting. What do you see? Lao Tzu asked. Wei swallowed. Myself. Do you? Lao Tzu tilted his head. Or do you see the expression you've worn in order to survive? Wei felt heat prick the back of his neck. I suppose it's the same. No, the old man said simply. It is not. He lifted the mirror and angled it so the flame danced across Wei's reflection. The shifting light changed the features. Hard, soft, shadowed, clear. None of them staying long enough to feel permanent. Notice, Lao Tzu murmured, how quickly a face changes. Yet you cling to every expression as if it were truth. Wei stared. His breath slowed. Lao Tzu lowered the mirror. Every emotion you chase or avoid is just a ripple. But you, your awareness, are the water beneath. Wei closed his eyes. Something heavy inside him stirred. Shame, fear, anger, pride. These things he had believed were himself suddenly felt like paint smeared over a deeper surface. When he opened his eyes, Lao Tzu was watching him with a softness that made Wei's throat tighten. You are beginning, the old man said. Wei exhaled shakily. Master, I've spent my whole life reacting. How do I stop? By seeing the reaction before you become it. Wei frowned. But that sounds like two versions of me. There are, Lao Tzu replied. One who panics, one who watches the panic. The second is the one that awakens. Wei let the words settle. They sank like stones into a deep pond. Lao Tzu stood, motioned for Wei to follow, and led him to the far end of the archives where a tall, sealed window overlooked the palace gardens. The old man slid open a narrow panel so a sliver of night air slipped in. Cool, smelling of damp earth and distant jasmine. Listen, Lao Tzu whispered. Wei listened. At first he heard nothing unusual. Crickets, distant voices, the hum of nighttime settling. But then, beneath all that, he noticed something subtler. His own breathing. And beneath his breathing, silence. A living, spacious silence that didn't feel empty. Lao Tzu pointed. There. That is the space where Zen Ren begins. Wei swallowed. Master, I don't know how to stay in that space. You don't stay, Lao Tzu said. You return. Again and again, like a river touching the bank. Wei's eyes stung unexpectedly. The old man closed the window panel. Come, there is more. He guided Wei to the archive's rear chamber, where ancient bamboo slips lay bundled in lacquered boxes. Lanterns cast honey-colored light through the thin paper walls. Lao Tzu knelt beside one box and withdrew a single slip, handing it to Wei. Read. Wei lifted it carefully. The characters were spare and elegant. The soft overcomes the hard. The yielding overcomes the rigid. He looked up. Tao Te Ching? Not yet, Lao Tzu said with a quiet smile. These are older lines, but the truth they point to will always be the same. Wei reread the slip. Soft overcomes hard. Yielding overcomes rigid. He thought of the river. He thought of his own clenched mind. He whispered, Master, is rigidity the ego? Lao Tzu's eyes glimmered. The ego is the belief that rigidity is safety. Wei felt something twist inside him, painful, familiar, undeniable. The old man continued. You have lived your life as if tension were a shield. But tension is a trap. It keeps you from moving, from seeing, from becoming. Wei lowered his gaze. I don't know how to let go. You aren't meant to, Lao Tzu said. Letting go happens when holding on becomes too heavy. Wei looked up slowly. That's already happening. Good. Lao Tzu rested a hand lightly on Wei's shoulder. A gesture so gentle it almost undid him. Then the work is not to force change. It is only to watch what hurts and soften around it. Wei swallowed the thickness in his throat. And if I fail? You will fail. Many times. That is the path. Wei nodded slowly. Something inside him, some stubborn knot, gave the smallest sigh. Lao Tzu stood. Come again tomorrow after dusk. Wei bowed deeply. Thank you, Master. As he stepped out of the archives into the cool night, the palace grounds looked different. Not brighter, not lighter, but truer somehow. The shapes of the trees, the touches of wind, the distant shimmer of lantern light. They all seemed to move with a kind of humble clarity he had never noticed. He walked home slowly, each step a little less defended than the last. That night, lying on his narrow mat, he didn't fall asleep immediately. Thoughts arose: fear, doubt, humiliation. But for the first time, he didn't chase them or hide from them. He simply watched. Beneath them all, he sensed again that spacious silence, soft, patient, waiting like a river at the edge of night. Towards Zenren, Wei returned to the archives the next evening with a subtle mixture of anticipation and dread. The palace desk carried a different weight now, less oppressive, more mysterious. Shadows stretched like long brushstrokes across the stone floors. Lanterns flickered with soft gold. The world felt suspended, as if waiting for him to step into something he couldn't yet name. Lao Tzu was already seated when Wei arrived, arranging old slips into small, orderly piles. He looked up and nodded, not as a master greeting a student, but as one presence acknowledging another. "Sit," he said simply. Wei lowered himself to the mat. Lao Tzu placed a thin bamboo slip before him. Wei read, "To return is the movement of the Tao. To yield is the way of the Tao." Lao Tzu watched him absorb the words. "You are returning now," the old man said. "Not to me, to yourself." Wei exhaled slowly. "Master, I feel as if everything in me is cracking open. But it's not clear. It's not peaceful. It's confusing." "That is the sound of armor falling," Lao Tzu replied. "Confusion is the mind's protest against honesty." Wei's eyes burned. "Why does it hurt?" Lao Tzu smiled gently. "Because you believed the armor was your skin." Wei lowered his head into his hands. A tremor passed through him. Not the panic he knew, but something quieter, like the first cold shock of stepping into a river. He felt exposed, uncertain, almost childlike. Lao Tzu let the silence stretch until Wei's breath steadied. "Tonight," the old man said, "we look inward." He closed his eyes. Wei hesitated, then followed. "Notice your breath," Lao Tzu murmured. "Notice how it rises without your command, falls without your permission, moves without your interference." Wei inhaled. He exhaled. For once, the breath didn't feel like something he had to manage. "Now," Lao Tzu whispered, "notice the watcher, the one seeing the breath." Wei sensed it, a quiet, simple awareness behind his thoughts, the place where his reactions did not instantly take root. "That watcher," Lao Tzu said, "is the beginning of Zenren." Wei's breath hitched. It felt like finding a doorway he had walked past 1,000 times without seeing. Lao Tzu continued, "The true person is not someone without fear. It is someone who is not owned by fear." Wei felt something inside soften, like sediment sinking to the bottom of a clear bowl. Lao Tzu opened his eyes. "Tell me," he said softly, "what stirs in you now?" Wei searched for words. "A kind of quiet, but fragile." "The quiet is real," Lao Tzu said. Its fragility is not. He stood and motioned for Wei to follow him outside. They walked through the palace gardens. Moonlight pooled on the gravel paths. The air carried the scent of night flowers, cool earth, distant incense from the temple ward. They moved without speaking, the world around them humming with a soft, living stillness. Lao Tzu led Wei to a small stone bridge arching over a narrow canal. Water flowed beneath it, silvered by moonlight. Look, the old man said. Wei leaned against the railing and gazed down. The water moved slowly, carrying leaves, petals, and drifting shadows, the same steady acceptance he had seen at the riverbank. Lao Tzu asked, "What does the water do?" "It flows," Wei said. "Always." "Does it complain when blocked?" "No." "Does it boast when clear?" "No." "Does it cling to form?" Wei shook his head. "No." Lao Tzu smiled. "Then why do you?" Wei felt the word strike him, not sharply, but deeply. Like a bell whose resonance reaches places sound cannot. He whispered, "Because I didn't know there was another way." "There is always another way," the old man said. "But you must see how you block your own flow." Wei's throat tightened. "How do I do that?" "By believing your thoughts more than your eyes. By gripping stories older than your life. By defending a self that does not exist." Wei felt the night tilt around him. Not violently, slowly, gently, as if the world were encouraging him to shift with it. "Master," he said, voice trembling, "if the self is a story, then who am I?" Lao Tzu placed a hand lightly on the railing. "You are the one who sees the story." Wei's breath left him all at once. A warmth spread through his chest. Not emotional warmth, but something more elemental, like space expanding inside of him. He looked down at the water again. It flowed. It accepted. It reflected. It did not cling. Wei whispered, "I want to live like that." Lao Tzu nodded. "Then begin with this. Stop trying to become someone. Start trying to see." Wei felt the truth of it settle into him like a stone finding the quiet floor of a lake. They stood together in silence. The water moved on. Crickets sang. A soft breeze brushed through the garden leaves like a musician testing the strings of an unseen instrument. "Finally," Lao Tzu said, "there's only one more thing to learn tonight." He turned to Wei, eyes holding a depth that felt both ancient and tender. "When you stop gripping your old self, the world will not collapse," he said. "It will simply become clearer." Wei swallowed. "And what will I become?" Lao Tzu smiled. "Yourself." The simplicity of the answer broke something open in Wei. Not a wound, an aperture. He breathed. For the first time in his life, the breath felt like his own. Wei returned home that night, walking differently. Not proudly, not fearfully, but naturally. His steps felt connected to the earth, rather than driven by tension. His shoulders softened. His gaze lifted. The world around him looked both the same and entirely new. Over the next weeks, he noticed the changes. When criticism came, a small part of him watched, instead of collapsing. When anxiety flared, it rose like a wave and receded without dragging him under. When old fears whispered, he heard them as echoes, not commands. Colleagues remarked on how calm he seemed. Some thought he was hiding something. Others assumed he had received secret praise. Wade didn't correct them. He simply smiled softly and returned to his work. One afternoon, as he left the palace, he passed the river. The water shimmered under the pale sky. A leaf drifted past, spinning gently, untroubled by the journey. Wade stood there for a long time. And then, without ceremony or declaration, he felt it. Not enlightenment, not mastery, not perfection, but alignment, a quiet, natural settling into himself. He was not free from fear. He was not free from thought. He was not free from the world. He was simply no longer tangled. The coil had unspooled. The armor had thinned. The watcher had awakened. Wade breathed in, breathed out, and felt the breath belong to the vastness behind it. Not someone elevated above life, but someone finally resting inside it. Thank you for listening. May you be well.